Today we're going to talk about the Anthropoid coffin that was found in KV55. This Anthropoid coffin was found by Theodore Daves in 1907 inside KV55. It is made out of wood, gilded and inlaid with precious and semi-precious stones like cornelian, turquoise, and dark blue glass to imitate lapis lazuli. When Theodore Daves first found the Anthropoid coffin, it was defaced and its cartouche was totally removed, meaning that the identity of this Anthropoid coffin was totally unknown to us. And so, Theodore Daves tried to solve the mystery of the Anthropoid coffin. And in order to do so, we need to start right from the beginning. KV55 is the Amarna tomb that was found at the Valley of the Kings. It was discovered in 1907 by Theodore Daves. When he first opened the tomb, he realized that it was totally unfinished. Yet he was able to attribute the tomb to the Amarna era due to its funerary equipment. This slide here shows the whereabouts of KV55 at the Valley of the Kings. As for this one here, it shows the staircase that leads to the tomb known today as KV55 and attributed to the Amarna era. When Theodore Daves first entered KV55, he realized that it was totally unfinished. Its walls received no decoration and the tomb itself was in a very bad condition. He only found few funerary equipment that he could attribute to the Amarna period. The first thing he actually found were remains of a gilded shrine which was made for Queen T by her son Akhenaten. Both names appeared on the shrine. This shrine today is exhibited at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. He also found 4 magical bricks. These were inscribed by chapter 151 of the Book of the Dead. They were inscribed with the name of King Akhenaten as well. Not only that, but he also found 4 canopic jars that were made out of alabaster and were once inscribed. However, all inscriptions have been removed. Last but not least, he actually found a defaced anthropoid coffin who was not only defaced but its cartouche was also removed. This slide here shows the interior design of KV55 and how the different objects that were found by Theodore Daves were arranged inside. However, these objects weren't of great help to Theodore Daves, who wanted to know the exact owner of the tomb. However, due to the existence of the gilded shrine that bore the name of Queen T, and due to the fact that both the anthropoid coffin and the canopic jars were wearing hair wigs, which meant that they were mostly made for a female, this helped Theodore Daves to attribute the tomb to Queen T. However, Theodore Daves wanted to be sure that the tomb belongs to Queen T, and so he brought 2 surgeons to KV55 in order to examine the skeletal remains of the mummy that were found under the anthropoid coffin. The 2 surgeons examined the pelvis of the skeletal remains that were found under the anthropoid coffin, and they confirmed that it was for a female rather than a male. This made Theodore Daves very happy because his assumption was right, and so he published a paper announcing to the whole world that KV55 belongs to Queen T. This wasn't the end of the scenario, as KV55 was re-examined again by an Egyptologist and a physician known as Elliot Smith. In 1911, Elliot Smith wanted to examine the skeletal remains under the anthropoid coffin, and after examination, he came up with a totally different conclusion than that of Theodore Daves, concluding that the skeletal remains belong to a male rather than a female. He also stated that the age of death for the male was around 25 years. Not only that, but he concluded his work by stating that the skeletal remains or the mummy was mummified to take the form of a female despite the fact that it belongs to a male, meaning that instead of crossing both hands on the chest, it was represented with one hand on the chest while the other hand near the thigh, like any female mummified. Thus, the question remains who was the owner of KV55 and the owner of the Anthropoid coffin? During the Amarna period, three kings ruled Egypt. The first one was Akhenaten, who died at the age of 41, which means that he doesn't match with the age of the skeletal remains. The second king was Semenech Kara, and the third was Tutankhamun. In 1922, KV62 was found, and it was attributed to King Tutankhamun, as not only his funeral equipment was inscribed by his name, but his mummy was actually found. And so, not only Akhenaten was eliminated for his age, but also Tutankhamun was eliminated because his mummy was found in his tomb KV62. And so we were only left with one figure from the Amarna era, which was King Semenech Kara. And so scholars attributed the tomb KV55 as well as the coffin to Semenech Kara, not because it was confirmed, but due to the method of elimination. Semenech Kara was one of the important kings and very mysterious who ruled Egypt either as a co-regent with Akhenaten or as a sole ruler after the death of Akhenaten under the name Ankheperura Semenech Kara. Till this day, the identity of Semenech Kara is disputed, as many believe that he was either Nefertiti herself or a separate king who ruled Egypt after the death of Akhenaten. In 2010, and because Zai Hawass was searching for the father of King Tutankhamun, the skeletal remains under the Anthropoid coffin of KV55 were re-examined, only to raise the age of the bones from 25 as stated by Elliot Smith to between the age of 35 and 40, which closely matched with the age of death of Akhenaten. Not only that, but after the examination of the skeletal remains, it proved to have a wide pelvis which matches with the statues of Akhenaten where he appears with huge hips and thighs. Not only that, but this has been confirmed by the fact that the cartouche of the king was removed and his face was defaced, meaning that the followers of Iman wanted to remove the identity of Akhenaten so as to prevent him from being resurrected, which means that this anthropoid coffin today is believed to belong to Akhenaten himself. Changing the identity of the anthropoid coffin to Akhenaten raised a lot of questions. The first question was why would the anthropoid coffin be wearing a hair wig instead of a Nemes headdress if it belongs to Akhenaten? Second question, why would Akhenaten, a male, be mummified in the form of a female? As for the third question, why would we find the anthropoid coffin and the mummy of Akhenaten in KV55 when we know he was buried in his tomb at Akhenaten, known as the royal tomb? The fourth and final question, why did we find the gilded shrine of Queen T in KV55 when her mummy was found in KV35, the royal cachette? Actually, KV55 is believed nowadays to have received two burials during the reign of Tutankhamun. The first burial was that of Queen T, as her mummy and gilded shrine were transferred from the royal tomb at Tell al-Amarna or Akhenaten to be buried in KV55. And after the tomb was locked and few weeks later in total secrecy, Tutankhamun reopened KV55 to transfer the mummy of his father and his anthropoid coffin from the royal tomb to KV55 in order to protect it from the followers of Iman. During the end of the Ramesside era, the tomb was reopened for the third time. as priests were searching for the mummies of their beloved kings and queens in order to protect them from the tomb robbers who would destroy them seeking jewelry and semi precious stones. And so they decided to put them in a new hiding place, which is known today as the Royal Cachette KV35. So they opened KV55 knowing that it was the tomb for Queen T, hoping to transfer her mummy to a new hiding place KV35, only to find another burial inside KV55, which was that of Akhenaten. And so when they saw his anthropoid coffin, they defaced it and they removed its cartouche. It is believed that they opened the anthropoid coffin to try and destroy his mummy. However, they found that the mummy was mummified in the form of a female with one hand clenched upon the chest while the other hand is on the side. So they left it unharmed, meaning that Akhenaten was mummified this way so as to protect his mummy from being destroyed. The last and final question: why would Akhenaten be represented in his anthropoid coffin wearing a hair wig? Actually, Akhenaten was represented wearing a hair wig not only in the anthropoid coffin but also in the canopic jars, because both of them were made originally for Kia, the secondary wife of Akhenaten, who died during his 16th regnal year. But due to the sudden death of Akhenaten, they actually used these funerary equipment for him instead of Kia. The anthropoid coffin was adjusted to fit Akhenaten by adding a bent beard as well as the crook and the flail to the hands so as to represent him as the king of Upper and Lower Egypt. Not only that, but they added new gold sheets to the inscriptions that were made on the anthropoid coffin in order to hide the female determinatives that were made for Kia. After that, they re-inscribed the inscriptions giving names and titles of Akhenaten. This is confirmed by the fact that some of the new sheets of gold that were added fell off, revealing the determinatives of the female that were once written upon the anthropoid coffin. As for the description, the lid of the anthropoid coffin represents the king in an Osiride form. He was once holding the crook and the flail, nowadays missing, but remains of which could still be seen in the showcase. The king is actually wearing the Nubian hair wig, which is decorated by the uraeus on the forehead. The uraeus is inlaid with blue glass and sheets of gold. His face is totally destroyed, but you can see one of the eyebrows and eyelids, which are made of blue glass to imitate lapis lazuli. Also, a bent beard was added to the chin in order to show him as a dead king. This bent beard is decorated by blue glass and sheets of gold. The king is represented wearing an usur collar, which is inlaid with precious and semi-precious stones made out of several layers and ends with beads. The rest of the anthropoid coffin is decorated by rishi decoration, which is inlaid with cornelian, turquoise, and blue glass to imitate lapis lazuli. The rishi decoration started to appear during the Middle Kingdom, as these represent the wings of Nephthys and Isis, the mourner goddesses. They were made to be their wings to protect the deceased during the afterlife. Not only that, but also to fan off the heat during his journey to the underworld. However, and due to the fact that King Akhenaten denied the existence of all the gods, including Nephthys and Isis, and so these rishi decorations are considered to be used only for decorative purposes. In the middle of the anthropoid coffin runs a line of hieroglyphic inscriptions giving names and titles of King Akhenaten. His cartouche has been removed so as to prevent him from being resurrected. The rest of the anthropoid coffin is in a very good shape. As for the coffer, it is found exhibited in a showcase near the lid of the anthropoid coffin. It is believed that this coffer was stolen. However, they managed to bring back the gold that was once decorating the coffer, and it was reconstructed on a modern glass container, which took a very long time in order to finish. But today it is in a very good condition, showing some of the rishi decoration as well as some of its inlayment. Moreover, it also shows names and titles of King Akhenaten. However, cartouches were also removed. Lastly, we say the anthropoid coffin is very important to us today because it not only reflects art during the reign of Akhenaten, but it also reflects a lot of historical facts we wouldn't have known if it wasn't for the anthropoid coffin.